Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jung-hyun. Let's meet our panelists. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk from Kyung University Graduate School of International Studies joins us. Welcome back. And we are joined today by Professor Park Hyun-do from Myeongji University's Institute of Middle Eastern Affairs. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
President Park Geun-hye has returned from her 5-day visit to Mongolia. We'll take a look at what achievements were made and what significance this trip holds.
After attending the 11th ASEM Summit in Mongolia, President Park Geun-hye continued on with a number of key events scheduled for her official visit to the country, including summit talks with her Mongolian counterpart, Chakyagin Elbegdorj. The two leaders agreed to expand economic cooperation and work closely together on the issue of North Korea's denuclearization.
지역 안정의 가장 큰 위협 요인이 되는 북한의 핵 개발 등 각종 도발에 대응해 나가는 데 있어서 몽골 측과 계속 긴밀히 협력해 나가고자 합니다.
Мөн хоёр орон Солонгосын хойгийг цомын зэвсгээс ангид байлгах, энэ бүс нутагт инх тайван аюулгүй байдлыг сахин хамгаалах чиглэл хамтарч ажиллах чиглэлээр ярилцлаа.
On the second day of her visit, a business forum was held for 109 Korean companies and Mongolian firms, during which one-on-one consultations also took place. Delivering a speech at the event, the president said the two countries will become partners in economic development. Hopes are President Park's visit will help Korea and Mongolia take another step forward in economic growth and help further bolster their bilateral ties.
So one of the notable developments would be the two countries agreeing to negotiate an economic partnership agreement, which is a specific type of free trade deal. Speaking of FTAs, what countries does Mongolia have this deal with, and how would an FTA benefit Korea and Mongolia?
Well, in fact, Mongolia has an FTA with Japan. In June, last June, the Mongolia and Japan FTA came into effect. If we have the economic partnership agreement with Mongolia, maybe we will be the second country to have an FTA with Mongolia.
So far, it's just Japan then.
When you look at the economic ties between two countries, I mean Korea and Mongolia, well, Korea has been the third trading partner for Mongolia, but for us, Mongolia is not yet a very important trading partner. But as you know very well, Mongolia has a huge land, and they also have abundant natural resources, particularly the coal and copper. They have the largest amount of reservations, the amount of the coal and copper in their territory. So for us, we need lots of raw materials for economic development, so we could get the very stable the supply of the raw materials, which is very important for us from Mongolia. And then through the FTA, EPA, we will be able to help the Mongolian economy in various ways. So in this context, definitely, if we have the economic partnership agreement with Mongolia, it can be a stepping stone for the future economic cooperations between Korea and Mongolia.
It's been 26 years since Korea and Mongolia established diplomatic relations. How has economic cooperation been between the two, and in what areas can we improve these economic ties?
I think it's better for us to review the economic size of Mongolia itself. The GDP of Mongolian GDP in 2015 was $11.6 billion, which is less than 1% of Korean GDP. So Korea can be a very big trading partner for Mongolia, but at the moment, Mongolia cannot be one of the major trading partners for us. But as I said before, it has a huge potentiality as a trading partner. Well, the population of Mongolia is about only 3 million. It's not very big though, but it shares borderlines with Central Asian countries, Russia and China. So in this context, definitely it can be a kind of the gate entering into these big markets in some way. So considering the huge amount of natural resources which they have, and then it's a neighboring country of the big markets, and also the Mongolian government has put the more priorities on the economic development. Considering all those kind of things, definitely there must be high potentiality for us to develop the economic cooperation with them in the future.
Well, another major accomplishment from the president's trip was winning over greater support from Ulaanbaatar on the issue of North Korea's denuclearization. We talked to an expert about the importance behind this.
북한과 몽골 관계는 1948년 양국 모두 정권이 수립된 이후 곧장 수교 관계를 맺었습니다. 그 이후에는 양국의 최고 지도자가 서로 방문하면서 우호 협력 관계를 더욱더 발전시켰습니다. 그러나 1990년대 한 몽골 간의 수교가 이루어지고 2000년대에는 몽골이 북한의 탈북자들 여기에 대해서 한국에 대한 나름대로 협력을 다해왔습니다. 그런 측면을 봤을 때 몽골과 북한 관계는 우호 협력 관계를 유지해왔지만 90년대 이후 오늘까지는 소난 관계 이런 것이 조금 있다 이렇게 이해하면 될 것 같습니다. 한국 입장에서는 몽골 간의 탈북자의 문제에 대한 협력 또 그리고 기후 사막 관련해가지고 한국 지원이 많고 몽골은 북한에 대해서는 외교적인 채널뿐만 아니고 나름대로 북한에 지원하고 있습니다. 그런 측면에서 일종의 외교적인 관점에서는 덩거리 외교를 펼치고 있고 또 2003년도에 북한의 비핵화를 위해서 육자회담이 구성될 때 몽골도 여기에 구성으로 들어오기를 상당히 희망을 했습니다. 그런 측면을 봤을 때 아마 몽골은 북한의 비핵화를 위해서 남북한 모두 외교 채널을 가지고 있기 때문에 중재자적인 역할을 할 수 있다. 아마 그렇게 생각하고 있는 것이 아닌가 생각됩니다.
Let's hope the president's visit will indeed further bolster Korea's ties with Mongolia. Switching gears, we saw another terror attack in France last week, which left at least 84 people dead and hundreds more injured in the city of Nice. Earlier in the week, thousands of people gathered there to mourn the victims. We'll take a quick look back at the attack in Nice.
On July 14th, French National Day or Bastille Day, a truck tore through a crowd celebrating the occasion in the southern city of Nice. The assailants started driving a 19-ton truck from a children's hospital at the speed of 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, mowing down crowds enjoying festivities. The truck zigzagged across the 2-kilometer stretch, resulting in many more victims. The attacker, Tunisia-born Nice resident Mohamed Lahouel Boulel, was fatally shot by police on site, and the truck was found carrying weapons and explosives. The Islamic State militant group claimed responsibility for the attack through its media agency Amaq, saying it was a response to their calls to target civilians from the Crusader Alliance who have been attacking Muslims. French President François Hollande announced the government would extend its state of emergency. France is struggling to cope with the Paris terror attack that claimed the lives of some 130 in addition to the fresh attack on Nice.
France is still reeling from the latest attack, the third in a span of 18 months. Now, IS has claimed responsibility, but local officials are not yet convinced that the truck driver had concrete ties with ISIS. What do we know so far?
As a matter of fact, ISIS never claimed any official statement concerning the terrorist attack. But only the mouthpiece of the ISIS, the so-called Amaq news agency, claimed that Omar al-Shishani was killed. And from that statement, we just simply conjecture that perhaps the terrorist attack was committed in order to retaliate for the death of the Omar al-Shishani, who was the commander, one of the most important commander in the ISIS the group. But the French government has not been very convinced the terrorist attack is related directly to the ISIS or not.
They're still investigating
Yes.
the matter as of now. But there were a lot of ISIS supporters online claiming that it was for their cause.
In 2014, the ISIS emphasized that the truck can be a tool for their terror attack. Well, this time, as you know very well, truck was used for their terror attack. So considering this kind of things, definitely we can guess that ISIS is involving in this terror attack. But still, as we discussed so far, no very clear evidence.
Whether it was by official IS command or not is something that authorities, I think, are looking into. But France seems to have become a major target within Europe for these terror attacks. Why do you think that is?
France has has engaged very deeply with the Muslim world than any other Western countries so far. For example, France colonized Algeria and Tunisia, almost all North African countries, and also the Syria and Lebanon. And France has one of the largest Muslim populations in Europe. And more than anything else, France is a divided country, especially between Muslims and non-Muslims. France does not allow any authority to ask a citizen what religion he belongs to, but it is estimated that about 70% of the prison inmates are Muslims. In that much, actually, Muslims are entirely segregated, entirely isolated from the mainstream society, French society. So the elements are combined to make France an easy prey for terrorist attacks.
Unhappy Muslims in France.
Can I add one more thing? In fact, in dealing with the situations happening in Syria and Iraq, unlike the other European countries, French government has been standing on the front line, fighting against the ISIS.
The largest contributor, aside from the U.S.
Owing to such a kind of the policy, in the international community, the French government could have the stronger voices than before. Definitely, so they must have enough reason why they can choose France as the target of terror attack.
There's also analysts who point out that the French radical right is growing in terms of its influence, and that is further stoking tensions between French and the Muslims.
Yes, so certainly it is one of the very clear reasons why they attack, the French.
Last year when the terror in Paris took place, ISIS actually they claimed their responsibility for the terrorist attack on the basis of the French participation in the airstrikes against them. So one of the direct reasons why the ISIS has made actually the France as a terrorist target is France actively participated in the airstrikes as of September 2015.
Right. So the threat of terrorism is no longer confined to specific areas, as we recently saw in the case of Bangladesh. And we're also seeing a myriad of new tactics being employed. So could we see this as a discernible shift in these activities by terrorists, in the way they conduct these terrorist
Actually, terrorist attacks are made especially on so-called soft targets. They do not consider the military bases or military vehicles or personnel as a very important target for terrorism. Rather, they try to, in order to disseminate the fear and panic amongst the civilians, they try to target so-called soft targets like the airports or bus terminals or the big gathering places. And actually, that kind of terrorist attack will come more often in the future. And the place cannot be actually predicted where it will be happen. For example, Bangladesh, it happened to Bangladesh, and suddenly everybody was paying attention to the Asian countries. Instantly, the Nice was attacked again. So no prediction can be made at this moment.
Yes, and increasingly we've also been seeing that these organized terrorist groups are reaching out to lone wolves in various societies.
Especially, for example, this time the Nice terrorist suspect who was killed at the rice pot, so far it is known to the mass media that he was not on the list of terrorist list, blacklist with the French government, and he has no criminal record on the terrorist criminal record, but he has been known to be using dating services in order to have female and male lovers. So perhaps some kind of personal reasons were involved in his terrorist attack. And also, I just got a report from the French newspaper that he prepared his terrorist attack in advance about 4 months, and he tried to find a place where would be the best place for him to conduct his own terrorist attack.
So there's a possibility that we're seeing a growing number of individuals use the excuse of IS as a way to commit crimes.
Yes, that's right. He has not been known as a very, very staunch, the so-called follower of ISIS. So that is more actually the worrisome.
Well, the frequency of these attacks has a lot of people worried. Some people say they're even scared to travel overseas. And we're already seeing this hurt tourism and local economies in Europe, aren't we?
Yes, it is, definitely. Europe has been in the so-called crisis over the several years. In the middle of the financial economic crisis, the Brexit happened, and it must be another negative impact on the European economy. And terrorist attack. Well, as you pointed out, the tourism industry has been hit very severely by this terror attack. As you know very well, Europe has been one of the fascinating places for travelers. So many people want to travel the European countries. Turkey was one of them, and then France must be one of the such a kind of the attractive countries in Europe.
And we're in the middle of peak vacation season as well.
Definitely. But there have been 3 big-sized terror attack in France. It required more than 180 lives. So people are afraid to travel the European countries. So when you look at some economic indexes showing the economic situations or how badly this terror attack hit the European economy is this. Well, the Air France, the stock prices of Air France dropped by 17% in June. And then as a whole in Europe, the income which European countries have got from the tourists was dropped only in June was by 14%. So certainly we can guess how severely tourism industry in Europe was hit by this terror attack. And then, as I said before, still the situation seems to be manageable. But when you look at the situation happening in Europe, as I mentioned before, Brexit, and then the 3 or 4 years existing economic crisis, well, maybe these things can give a kind of some fatal blow on the recovery of economies in Europe. So definitely we have to wait and see, but when you look at the current situation, it does not go very good yet, still.
So countries around the world now face the question of how to deal with terrorism in the most effective way. What can the international community do?
Right, basically the most important thing is to get rid of ISIS as soon as possible. But it is very difficult because the political agenda of each country is entirely different from each other. For example, Turkey is very well known to support, in a sense, well, not support, but does not care about ISIS. Rather, they care more about getting rid of the Assad in Syria. So the international community should get together and how to get rid of ISIS and what kind of solutions they try to put forward in terms of the future of Syria. That is most important thing right now. Other than that, ISIS will stroll anytime, anywhere.
And continue to reach out to lone wolves in many corners of the world. Well, also in the news this week is Turkey, after a failed coup attempt last weekend left hundreds dead or injured and thousands detained. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has successfully quashed the attempted coup, but there's still a lot of unrest. Here's a rundown of the key developments.
At around 10 o'clock at night on July 15th in Turkey, soldiers engaged in a military coup sealed off the Bosphorus Bridge in Istanbul in 2 locations. After that, reports of gunfire circulated along with news that forces behind a takeover had secured the capital, Ankara. To this, the Turkish Prime Minister announced the developments were all part of unauthorized military actions. At 11 p.m., the coup forces said the measure was to ensure the protection of democracy and took over key buildings, including a state-run broadcaster. And just hours later, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who was on summer vacation at the time, conducted an interview via FaceTime with CNN, turning things around. He urged citizens to protest against the coup, and social media helped draw out more support from the public. By 1 a.m., government forces had started to exchange fire with those behind the coup, turning the capital Ankara into a battlefield within hours. Roughly 6 hours after the takeover attempt was launched, the Turkish government began fighting back with some 30 members holding out. President Erdogan, returning quickly from his holiday, announced at 4 a.m. that the coup had failed from an airport in Istanbul. Immediately after this, the government arrested roughly 130 people involved, drawing the takeover attempt to a close. The failed coup left around 290 people dead, including civilians.
So why did the coup happen? How did it fail? And what's the latest in Turkey? We have researcher Song Il-kwang from Konkuk University's Center for Middle Eastern Studies on the line with us from Istanbul. Mr. Song, thanks for joining us. So you're in Turkey at the moment. How are things looking as of now?
Yes, I arrived at Turkey at 16th of this month, July. When I came out of this international airport, I saw many Turkish people gathered near to the airport, and they called and shouted, supporting Erdogan. The next day, I looked around, Istanbul. First impression was Turkish government, they did a very good job to erase the trace of this coup. It was very clean. We couldn't see any traces of coup. But I saw also many Turkish special forces patrolling around the city. Many places we could see special forces with their gun, and they're patrolling the important spots. I could feel the tense of coup.
Now, the military coup attempt lasted only 6 hours. How did it come to take place in the first place, and why do you think it failed?
I think the main reason is that the current President Erdogan tried to reorient Egypt from secular state to Islamic state. This bothers most the military. And the second question, why this coup failed? The Turkish people did not support this coup enough. The second reason why the military failed, many of the military did not support this coup. Most of the army did not support this coup. They did not cooperate with this coup forces.
So what is the public sentiment toward President Erdogan at the moment?
I went to Taksim Square. Lots of people gathered around Taksim Square, and they sang a song and supporting President Erdogan. Maybe this, protestation or this event organized by Turkish government. However, TV and people in the street also they believe in, the current President Erdogan.
Thank you, Mr. Song, for sharing your insight with us today. That was Konkuk University researcher Song Il-kwang joining us from Istanbul, Turkey. Now, we heard about some of the basic elements at play here, but another question remains, and that is, why now? Turkey recently saw a number of terror attacks in its territory, the most recent one occurring just last month. Could this be related at all to the coup attempt?
Well, apparently the terrorist attack have not been affiliated with this kind of the military coup d'etat. It's more like it has more to do with Erdogan's authoritarian or autocratic rule of the country, because President Erdogan, the current president of the Turkey, has long desired a full presidential system on the basis of the Islamic values. So, which means that he tried to transform the secular Republic of Turkey into a very religious and Islamic Republic of Turkey. And every intellectual, especially also, probably there was some kind of the very concerned elements in the military who tries to preserve secularism of the Turkey, and they try to probably by using military forces they try to turn the table, but apparently the information was leaked, and National Intelligence Service in Turkey known as the MIT got the information and already informed the military, and in order not to be stopped, probably some of the military coup d'etat forces, they tried to hurry. They were in a hurry to make a military coup d'etat entirely isolated.
Now, U.S.-based cleric and former ally of President Erdogan, Fethullah Gulen, has accused the president of staging the coup, while the president claims it was the Gulen followers who are responsible for this. What's the story behind these two allies turned foes?
At first, actually, the Turkish government denied that they already got wind of the military coup d'etat information, denied, and everybody was suspicious of the government position because they did not know about military coup d'etat at all. But after 6 hours and after the failed coup d'etat, they arrested almost 9,000 people within a day. How could it possible? How could it be possible? Actually, that was the reason why many people think that the President Erdogan staged the coup d'etat by himself in order to solidify his power base.
He already had dissidents in mind.
Yes. And also, actually, there was information that the Turkish government already prepared a list in advance, in the list of the people who do not faithfully follow the current government. So they not only arrest not only the military coup d'etat leaders, but also were unrelated. The coup d'etat unrelated people to coup d'etat also arrested, and also they were fired from their own positions. So the so-called, and the President Erdogan called them as the virus. So now the Turkish government is trying to purge the virus from Turkey, and that's why many people were very suspicious of the government. But at the same time, the President Erdogan and his government blame the coup d'etat on his former ally, but it turned into the rival, Fethullah Gulen. But I don't think Fethullah Gulen was behind the military coup d'etat.
So now, basically, President Erdogan has an excuse to persecute whomever he doesn't like.
Yes, he is very autocratic. He will be a very autocratic leader. Nobody can stop him. And nobody can stop him, actually. It's probably, he will make a very important, actually, the announcement very soon concerning the future of Turkey, in order to utilize this the failed coup d'etat as a good excuse to transform Turkey into a very religious and Islamic republic.
With a stronger executive presidency, perhaps.
Yes.
So, is that how this is all going to end?
Well, he always reiterated once and over again that his primary concern is Islam. So and he tried to make Turkey an Islamic country. So he's going that way, going in that direction. About half of the population supporting him very dearly.
Bu vatanın bir evladı. Olağanüstü hal ilanının amacı ülkemizde demokrasiye, hukuk devletine, vatandaşlarımızın hak ve özgürlüklerine yönelik bu tehdidi ortadan kaldırmak için gereken adımları en etkin ve hızlı şekilde atabilmektir. Bu uygulama kesinlikle demokrasiye, hukuka ve özgürlüklere karşı değildir.
Turkey is a popular tourist destination among Koreans and many others, but the recent string of events has put a damper not only on tourism but on foreign investment as well. How big of an impact do you think this will have on Turkey's economy?
It must be very huge because, there is a theory in international business. Well, when the investors consider the destination where they want to make investment, they consider the political stability of a country as number one, the factor. So the Turkey is certainly in the recent period, it has achieved very remarkable economic growth. Well, among the new economies, emerging economies, definitely the Turkey performs very well. But after the military coup, definitely the foreign investors could not regard Turkey as one of the safe places for their foreign direct investment. I will give you some data. In fact, as of the end of the May this year, total the inward foreign direct investment in Turkey was about $7.3 billion, which was really huge increase in comparing with the 1 year before. Same period in last year, well, in fact, about $3.2 billion left from Turkey. So the situation this year was much better than the previous year, but I doubt whether such a kind of trends could continue after the military coup. Definitely, as I said before, the foreign investors are hesitating whether they continue to make investment into Turkey or not. So this can be, if the foreign investors do not make investment in Turkey, definitely it can be a fatal blow on the Turkish economy, because Turkish economy has been developed based on the incoming investment. So certainly this can be one of the negative factors on the Turkish economy.
So, Professor Park, you predict that President Erdogan is probably going to use this opportunity to solidify his rule over the country, which will inevitably involve some sort of democratic backsliding through persecution, incarceration of dissidents, so-called dissidents. But world leaders have strongly warned against this phenomenon happening. How do you see this affecting international relations in the future?
It is very confusing and quite, in a sense, very preposterous, in a sense, because the international community, especially including United States, backed the President Erdogan because they cannot support undemocratic military coup d'etat. But we have two fires: undemocratic coup d'etat and undemocratic leaders.
Right.
And also, at the time, right now, the reason why the international community is supporting behind the President Erdogan is simple. Right now, they are at war with ISIS. So we have a very famous problem that we cannot swap horses while we are crossing the river. So they cannot swap the horses. The Erdogan should be in place in order to defeat ISIS and in order to gain more cooperation from Turkey. But at the same time, the Secretary of State, John Kerry, actually warned Turkey not to sacrifice any democratic institutions and the rule of democracy and rule of law. But Turkey, I don't think Turkish government would heed the kind of the warning or any the advice from the international community, because definitely right now, Turkey made it very clear. President Erdogan makes it very clear that he will consider the capital punishment back on the track once again.
So basically, the Western world is stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to dealing with Turkey. In the meantime, news is emerging that President Erdogan is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So perhaps Turkey will decide to lean that way against the Western world.
Well, we need more time to see what will happen, but definitely about 2 or 3 weeks the Turkey tried to actually made a very love call, made a love call to President Putin, and because their relationship has been very soured because the Turkish military shut down the Russian jet plane, but Russia is making friends with President Erdogan once again, and also the Turkey is getting closer to Israel too. So Turkey is moving, but I don't know what will happen to the relationship between Turkey and the Western countries. But what is really important is at the moment is the European Union and also United States need Turkey very badly in order to defeat ISIS.
Can I add one thing
Sure.
more? Definitely, I mean, in determining the balance of power in the world, definitely the relationship between European Union and Turkey seems to be very important. As you know very well, Turkey has wanted to join to the European Union, but European Union has not been say yes to them. So I think it can be one of the way for us to control the Turkish government, the future policy direction. As Professor Park pointed out, definitely Turkish government seems to change some fundamentals of the governing system and the policy directions, or even in the diplomatic relations. But we have to wait and see. And considering the relationship European Union with the European Union, definitely Turkey cannot be very free from the burden imposed by the European Union and the United States. And second point, actually, I read some newspaper. Actually, I want to ask this question to Professor Park. In fact, the Turkey, the president, most of them come from the Sunni. According to the principle of Sunni, the religion should be separate from the politics. So, in this context, some experts said that the Turkish government could not go back to real Islamic countries, as many experts are really worried about. What is your opinion?
Well, actually, Turkey has been a very secular society, separating religion and politics for the last 100 years. But what is certain is that President Erdogan has been marching the path entirely in opposition to the previous the tradition. What he is doing, what he has been doing, is entirely different from what the father of the Turkish Republic, Atatürk, did. So Turkey has been transforming into a very new country, and what he terms as new Turkey. So the new Turkey is coming up, but what kind of new Turkey would it be? Well, actually, we need more time to see. But from his own the own words and his actual expressions and the addresses, it is quite certain that his primary concern is Islam and Islam.
And it's pretty well known that he's a very devout
very
Muslim
devout
as well.
Yeah, but what I like to add one thing, actually, what we need to see is whether Turkey will bring back the capital punishment or not. Because if Turkey brings back the capital punishment again, which he abolished in 2004, then there is no way for Turkey to be a part of EU. EU will strongly reject the Turkish membership to EU if Turkey revives capital punishment.
Well, we have to wrap up our discussion. Your final thoughts of the week.
Well, I want to give a big applause to President Park Geun-hye, because considering our economic structure and the reality facing us, definitely through summit diplomacy, we have to diversify our economic relations. In this context, well, through her state visit to Mongolia, definitely she made the contract equivalent to about 5 trillion won. So I want to keep fingers crossed for her summit diplomacy.
Economic gains plus support for North Korea
Definitely,
issues, right?
yes.
Professor
Well,
Park?
for me, actually, it is very interesting to see what will happen to Turkey, because Turkey is a very important country and played a very important role as a military alliance in the structure of NATO. So if Turkey goes away from that actually the alliance activities with the United States and NATO member countries, then that will be a big, it will bring a lot of chaos and confusion in the Middle East and also in the world.
Turkey and Korea are known as brother countries. All right. Well, thank you two very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
That is all for this edition of News Inside. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more next week.